we're live. Shane, tell us who you are and what you do.
What's up, man? I am Shane Jones from multiple podcasts, actually. Inquiries of Our Reality and Bizarre Encounters with Shane and Oren. And, I've been podcasting now for going on like 3 years or so, on top of, doing my own little side ventures, research, all that kind of stuff. But I guess at the heart of it, man, I'm a researcher, a podcaster, and an investigator, and, always a father, too.
Yeah, for sure. How long have you been podcasting?
About 3 years or so now.
Okay.
I think the fourth season's about to start up for both my shows in April and June. So it's like, a season ahead. So it should be just starting the third year in about 2-3 weeks or so, something like that.
Yeah. And what's the best place? So obviously people can find you everywhere, right? But what's the place? I mean, tell us where they can find you, but also what's the place you want people to go?
Well, I guess the one perk, would be if anybody uses Spreaker, just because that's my main one that I use. I get a little bit of a boost if anybody uses Spreaker, but
same.
Realistically, at the end of the day, I'm on Spotify, I'm on Amazon, I'm on iTunes, I'm on any podcatcher you happen to look up, and on YouTube and stuff, of course. So anywhere you look up Inquiries of Our Reality, I have that whole feed taken. And Bizarre Encounters with Shane and Oren, it sounds a little bit long, but there was this whole story behind it that about a year ago or so, some other podcasts decided to start up and call themselves Bizarre Encounters Podcast after we'd been running Bizarre Encounters for a couple of years. So it started messing up all of our feeds and everything. So in order to separate it, I did Bizarre Encounters with Shane and Oren. And I think that other show stopped, but I just kind of left it. So if you see that long, annoying name, yes, that one is me.
That one is me. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty funny. So,
but hey, you got to have some kind of ownership over your shows, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. So Spreaker's the place, right? Because, you do get a little bit of a boost. I just actually moved everything, migrated everything to Spreaker. I had been running through, importing to Spreaker and then kicking out. But now I just made them my base. So,
honestly, I mean, for the price and all the stuff they offer, though, for anybody, honestly, starting up a podcast, actually, I wouldn't say it's the best for if you just started.
No, it's not.
I would say Anchor or one of the free ones for sure if you just started. I guess even Spreaker has a free version, but once you get rolling a bit and you start getting listeners and you get monetized and all that stuff, there's no better choice than Spreaker, at least at this current time. But it's always shifting, as I'm sure you've seen as podcasters.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Red Circle was the one for a minute. Now it's everybody.
Yeah, and now I was on Red Circle for about a day. and some things just didn't happen the way that I wanted them to. And I was like, you know what? This is not right. So I just took everything again, went from Podbean to Red Circle, and then straight. I'm just all out of Spreaker now.
Yeah, see, I started off with Anchor, and then I temporarily switched to Podbean for a day. Somebody told me about Red Circle. I switched to that one, ran that one for a while, thought it was really good until I started seeing what other people were doing with Spreaker. Yes. And then I had Jeremiah from Bigfoot Society. He was like, man, you got to get on Spreaker. And then I also had, who was it? Brian from Sasquatch Odyssey.
Yeah.
Then he was like, yeah, you got to switch over to Spreaker. So I just had too many other good podcasters telling me to switch over.
The only one that convinced me to go to Red Circle, he did, and then it just didn't work out, was the guys from Cryptids of the Corn. They had convinced me to go to Red Circle. And I tried it, and I literally lasted a day.
See, I had to jump from there because I had Jerry now the late Jerry from Hillbilly Horror Stories.
Yeah.
He was the one that told me to do that, which I'm pretty sure he's the same one that told Tony Merkel at the time and Cryptids of the Corn. So I think he was the one that started the ball rolling down on that one.
Probably.
And we all switched over, and then,
No, I did like it. It just didn't have everything that I wanted exactly the way that I wanted it. So whatever. Anyway.
Spreaker's neater anyways.
Yeah. It's just, and they give you boosts for doing things with them. So why not?
They actually have sponsors that aren't, just random Spanish ads. So I mean,
isn't that bizarre?
I'm not trying to say ads are good for anybody, but I don't know about you, but I would rather hear a McDonald's ad on a podcast than oh, here's your thing for some off the wall drug or prescription that you might want to take. Here's this thing for this local random thing. It totally sounds weird. A little bit better if it's just a quick, bigger ad, exactly. They got better sponsors for the shows anyway. So.
For sure. So, All right. So with that being said,
Gotta get the podcast stuff
and that out of the way, right?
right?
What was your gateway to this world of high strength? Like mine was Bigfoot. What got you into this crazy land that we live in?
Well, I guess this is kind of a complex question with multiple possible answers. Depending on if you're asking podcasts, what started getting me into like believing in the possibility of stuff being off, or just paranormal experiences in general.
Paranormal
which
in
kind
general.
of where you want to go.
Yeah. So like literally what got you intrigued in the whole, just in life in general, the whole, like, did you have an experience when you were a kid or what? You know what I mean?
So it kind of has like multiple steps. That's why I was kind of asking for that question. So when I was a kid, of course, I grew up having these astral travel experiences, except I didn't exactly know what they were at the time. But I just remember like waking up, I would like see myself sleeping in the bed still, and I would like walk around and like traverse around like reality around me. And that was super duper weird. I didn't quite know where to place that. But then, of course, that as I got older, started kind of leading into some other stuff, such as some shadow people experiences, sleep paralysis. And I can definitely get into this afterwards if you'd like me
absolutely.
to. But also on top of that, I also had my grandma, who was 100% Cherokee, that would always grow up telling me all these folklore stories about like Native American, like cryptids, folklore, like all these different things too. So I kind of had this combination of these like weird astral travel experiences, and I also had growing up hearing all of these like folklore stories. And then from that, of course, you start kind of questioning like what's real, what's not, and you start really starting to like tear things apart. So like the first like honest, solid, real world thing that started connecting everything for me, just because I was in first grade when it happened, but it ended up being 9/11, weirdly enough. That's when I like really started questioning stuff, which kind of led the ball down to like looking into like, all right, do aliens exist? Does Bigfoot exist? Does this exist? Is the government lying to us? Which for most people in this field, I know, some people stick to Squatch, some people stick to this, but it's kind of like an avalanche to me. Like once it starts, it all just kind of rolls into all these other things. So, and then, of course, I have had a multitude of just weird different sightings and all that kind of stuff through the years. And then inevitably led into me kind of researching all this stuff and investigating it myself, and which led eventually into like the podcast, and eventually kind of where I am now as far as doing the two shows. One of them's interview style so that I can talk to people about their experiences, their research, start connecting stuff like that. And then on the other side, my other show is primarily like me and my co-host doing deep dives and research. So kind of has two different sides of the spectrum, depending on like, what I'm feeling at the time, because, one of them, you want to be able to do your deep dives and research. The other one, you want to do your interviews, and most people just kind of want one or the other. So I kind of made two different places to stick individual type of show. But yeah, like I said, it's been like a constant spiral of just like weird events that have happened. I know I have this one particular sighting that I'm sure a lot of people like hearing about, so I definitely can get into that and set the pace for that one. But that's kind of honestly what opened the door for me step by step, was just multiple events just kind of opening the door a little bit more each time, until eventually the door was just completely blown wide and I just immersed myself into this universe,
Yeah, those doors don't last long.
No, especially once they start cracking at the seams, man. It's only so long before they completely bust out. Like I said, it's like an avalanche, man.
Yeah. So what is your favorite subject?
Honestly, it kind of shifts depending on what I'm into at the current time. But as far as I usually like diving into different like types of creatures, beings, entities, folklore. So that kind of sounds like a broad range of things, but aliens, cryptids, the paranormal, different weird entities and sightings and everything. Just because for me, at least, that's like the connection that I need to like open everything up to the real world. So it's like, for me, that's the one that's the closest for me to be able to actually be able to full blown like investigate. Like I definitely dive into like government conspiracies and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day,
help it.
Yeah, like I can't, get this document that I need. I can't get this that I need. Like there's only so much moving around you can do unless you have connections as far as like whistleblowing or letting out conspiracies. But, when it comes to trying to investigate the paranormal, UFOs, aliens, all that kind of stuff, it's a little bit more hands-on, where you can actually get out in the field and actually try to do something, talk to people with sightings, and it just opens the door more for you being able to do your own research and not basically just wait at the beck and call of like the government releasing documents, for example, or, astrophysicists releasing the next big crazy idea about opening a portal or whatever else happens to be going on at the time.
I am finding, especially, with you growing up with a Cherokee grandmother, Cherokees have the best stories, man. Have some good stories. And I think it's indicative of where they're from, or where with the Appalachian Mountains and the, Western North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, that whole area, they got some really good stories. So you were kind of blessed growing up with that stuff, I think.
Man, I heard a lot about different Sasquatch stuff. I heard about like Thunderbirds. I heard about Uktena, all that kind of stuff. And the cool part was, I live up in Michigan, and my grandma lives up in Michigan, but her family was from down in Georgia, and she used to still make it down there. So she used to go down to powwows and all that kind of stuff all the time, up until she eventually got a little bit older, got into some accidents, and she just wasn't as mobile and stuff. But it was cool. She still kind of had that real world connection where she was going back, she was hearing new stories, she was going to the powwows and hearing about new stories and everything, and then coming home and sharing them. So honestly, it was a super nice thing growing up, and it's one of those things that those people that you wish were just around a little bit longer so you could have appreciated it a little bit more. Because she passed away, unfortunately, when I was in 7th grade. And I didn't get heavy into researching all this stuff, other than just kind of hearing them from her and stuff until like high school. So, if she could have just been around for an extra 5 years, man, I could have opened the door on so many different new things, man.
Right. True story. So Michigan. So what do we got up there?
As far as like creatures and sightings and everything?
I mean, like what and where in Michigan?
Well, for me, I live near like the Detroit area, for example. But as far as like Michigan sightings and everything, this is probably one of the first best times you probably could have asked me, because I actually just put together an episode that's going to end up dropping this Wednesday. I don't know when this is getting released, but
it's going to be a while,
on Bizarre Encounter. So it'll probably already be out. It's called Michigan Mysteries. And what I was trying to do was...
I'll make sure that I bring it up. Michigan.
It's going to be Bizarre Encounters episode 111. But on that one, I ended up trying to dive into not just like the stuff that people know about from Michigan, but like some really, really weird, like obscure things, because, Michigan wise, everybody knows about the Michigan Dogman, or at least anybody in this community kind of has some ideas of the Michigan Dogman. And I've, done enough research on that I found some weird stuff that not a lot of people have like probably dived into as far as the Michigan Dogman. So it's one of those things that, at least on the show, I kind of felt like I bled it dry. So I was trying not to do that in that particular episode. But, on top of that, Michigan's had a bunch of Sasquatch sightings. We got a bunch of UFO sightings. And actually, there's a city that's over on the Lake Michigan side of Michigan. And it's supposed to be, I think, number 3 top location for UFO abductions, at least back in like the 70s and 80s.
Where is that?
That's how do I even explain it? It's Michigan, you use your hand as a map. But
I do know Michigan pretty well. Like I have family in Fruitport.
It's midway up the
Grand
state,
Rapids.
over on like the Lake Michigan side.
Okay.
It's because there's the Lake Michigan Triangle over there, and it kind of like touches around like where the corner of that's at, which is about mid-state up over on like the coast of the state.
Gotcha. Okay.
But so on top of that, Michigan's had its little bit of everything. And then Detroit, of course, has a lot of the occult stuff going on. Not a lot of people know this, but we have the Masonic Temple, which is a pretty common venue hall. And that was actually a Masonic temple that was started by Crowley himself, I believe, back in like the 1920s. So, kind of funny that a lot of people go to that place as a concert, not realizing that it's like was literally started by like Aleister Crowley. So there's this weird underlying occult side of Detroit. You go north and you have all these weird different creature sightings in the woods. You go over to the other side of the state and you start getting over by the Lake Michigan Triangle, and you have all the UFO stuff. So there's kind of just, depending on what area in Michigan you're in, there's a little bit of something weird going on.
Man, that's nuts. Target rich, right? So you brought up something in the when you were talking about it, and you talked about kicking into that, and now I didn't write it down.
Oh, you're talking about my creature sighting?
Yes.
So I guess to kind of lay this one out a little bit, this also will pertain to Michigan, so I guess 2 birds, 1 stone with that one, right? Actually. So So my girlfriend and I used to go urban exploring back when we had first met, and this was probably around like 2013 or so. For anybody that's not familiar with what urban exploring is, it's basically when you sneak into abandoned buildings. People have different purposes for that, of course. Some people vandalize, some people paranormal investigate. Some people just go there to, do things they're not supposed to do. But, you know, for us at least, we kind of respected the buildings because we used to just find it kind of beautiful that just to see the weird destruction, all like the plants growing through everything. So my girlfriend was a photographer, so she'd always go and take pictures. And I, of course, was into like the weird stuff, so I'd kind of do like my own little like paranormal investigating. But this was very like I didn't understand what I was doing at the time, so I'll kind of weave that into the story because there's multiple sightings that happen at this place. But I always like to talk about it. But Northville Psychiatric Hospital. So this place isn't just one main building. It's like a full campus. There's, dorms, there's the main hospital, there's like churches, there's like a gym, there's a bunch of different stuff. And it's just this big campus. And, just like most mental institutions, it's got its tumultuous history with a lot of mistreatment of the patients and everything. So we heard all this weird stuff about it, figured it'd be a perfect place to go and start, urban exploring at. So we started going to this place, and we got to a point where we started going almost every single weekend. And we started like mapping this place out. We know where all the buildings were. I found like amateur maps people did online, and I tried to reconnect where all the tunnels and everything like that were at. And one of the first times that we had gone there, and again, like I said, this was before I really started diving into how to paranormal investigate properly. I had found a no smoking sign, and I had also found it looked like a tiki head that was made out of like foam or something that somebody like cut with like a butter knife or something. Like my assumption was it was probably something made by one of the patients at the time and like arts and crafts because you can't give them a piece of wood and a knife to whittle something. Right. So a piece of foam and like a butter knife or something might work perfect, but it was just this really crudely painted styrofoam like tiki head. But I thought it was really weird. So I thought it was like, all right, cool. I'm going to take this thing home. So end up taking this thing home, and my girlfriend and I walk in the door. We go to like put our backpacks down and everything. And the way the front room's set up, there's like you walk in the front door, there's the stairs going upstairs, and then there's the front room, and then there's the kitchen behind that. And then there's like two doorways, so it like circles around. So we go in upstairs, put our backpacks up, come back downstairs, and I'm standing at the base of the stairs. My girlfriend goes to walk into the kitchen. And as she goes to walk into the kitchen, both of us lock direct eye contact with this dark figure sitting on the couch. Whoa. And she ends up beelining past it because it was like one of those moments of fear where she just didn't know what to do. So she just continued on with what she was doing. So she like walks right past this thing when she's standing like an inch in front of it on the couch, loops back around, looks at me. I look at her and she goes, "You saw that, right?" I'm like, "You saw that too, right?" And we look back and the thing isn't there anymore. So I'm like, all right, that was weird. So later on that night, I'm always a night owl. I've always been a night owl. So I'm up late. I'm watching TV, doing all that kind of stuff. My girlfriend falls asleep. And I am just sitting there watching TV, and I start hearing like movement in the hallway, and it sounds like footsteps walking down the hallway. And then I hear a doom, 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 and it sounds like somebody gets pushed down the stairs. And as that happens, my girlfriend springs up. She looks at me, and I go, "What just happened?" She goes, "I just had a dream I got pushed down the stairs." And I'm like, "Well, that's weird because I just heard somebody fall down the stairs." And we both went in the hallway. We like peeked around and everything like that. And up to this point, like my girlfriend knew nothing about my like astral travel experiences or sleep paralysis experiences or anything like that from when I was like a teenager growing up or anything. So I sat down, had to like explain to her what all this stuff was. And the next day I decided like it's probably a good idea to bring these items back because I'm assuming that tiki head in particular probably was whatever that thing was attached to. So after that, we started kind of being a little bit more cautious with this place, of course. But we got to a point where, like, every time we go there, we take pictures, we do this, we do that. And, with pictures, there's only so much you can really do with it. Like, you'd always find orbs and everything, but these old dusty buildings, like, it can go either way. It might be an orb, it might just be dust. So,
right.
We just kind of wanted to get a little bit more out of this place. So we kind of just started to explore a little bit into some other places that we hadn't been before, like such as the tunnels. We started kind of figuring out where all of those and everything were. But in the process of us trying to figure out like where these tunnels and everything were, and I'll get into like the main experience that happened in these tunnels. There was one day that we were up on the third floor, and this was like the only like semi paranormal experience that had like really happened like at the location besides my like main experience. But we were up on like the third floor, I believe. and I heard this door just slam shut, like as hard as you could possibly slam a door shut. And it ended up being this blue door that had this like smiley face that was on it. And the weird part was that all the windows, ironically, on this floor, at least in this area, like none of them were busted out. So there wasn't wind or nothing like that. Ended up leaving the door open to see if it would slam shut again. And nothing ever ended up happening. Not even a wiggle from this door. So I was like, all right, that's something kind of weird. That's something interesting. So, like I said, just a little kind of minuscule things like that, other than the one thing ended up following me home and everything. But this might connect into the main experience. I've never really been able to fully tell if it does or not. So I always just tell it just for the sake of if it does connect, or maybe connect some dots in somebody's head out there. But so Michigan, not really known for cougars or anything, especially not the Detroit area. Like maybe up north, maybe out in the rural areas, like you'll find some cougars, but you're not going to find any near the Detroit area or near Northville where this place was, which is just like an offshoot of Detroit. But so we're in the building, we're looking out the back windows, and there's this like back patio back patio area that kind of leads into this like wooded area. And actually, little funny side note: are you a horror fan? Have you ever heard of the movie It Follows?
Yeah, I'm not a horror fan per se, but I know It Follows. I know that.
Have you seen the movie though?
I haven't.
Okay, so there's a part where the thing transfers over to the girl, and they're doing their hanky panky whatever in a car that's in this abandoned lot that has this building in the background. That's Northville, actually. So if anybody's ever seen that movie, that exact spot is the exact lot that I'm talking about behind this building that leads into the woods and everything, which I always thought was really cool. But get back into the experience. So we're looking back into those woods, and we see this cougar walk out, and it looks up at us, and then it ends up looking back down, and it just kind of links back.
Was it just like a regular cougar, not like
not a black cougar or anything like that,
or had a weird size or anything? It's just a regular cougar.
Just looked like it was just a straight up regular cougar. But again, it's just weird in the area.
Yeah,
like I normally wouldn't think anything of it, but like this is not an area where cougars are like ever seen. And I ended up looking it up a little bit. And apparently there was a few random cougar sightings in that area, and it's enough that it's newsworthy, because cougars, again, aren't seen near the city. So something weird. I don't know if it connects into this whole thing, but I always tell it just for the sake of it, because maybe it does. But so like I was kind of mentioning before with the Northville tunnels, these tunnels they basically connect all into the city. They were like access points. They don't also use them for like transferring patients from like building to building and stuff like that too. But so they had like many different purposes, but they're still there. They connect underneath the city and everything like that. And we'd gotten to a point where we had urban explored this place so much that we were just like, all right, maybe we need to try to find something else to be able to start exploring. And the only reason we hadn't really gone down there before was just because of the fact of, if you run out of lights and you're 2 miles into this tunnel, you got to feel your way all the way back, feeling the walls all the way back in the pitch black, because this is like underground, like no partial spots sticking up, like it's underground, like so we were like, all right, maybe we'll just kind of go in there a little bit. We won't go too far. We got some extra batteries. We'll just kind of see what this place is all about, because this is like the place where a lot of the stories go back in the 80s, where there's these during the satanic panic and everything about people getting sacrificed down in these tunnels, and all these ghost stories down in these tunnels. So this is like the nitty gritty of like where most of the lore from Northville comes from, is from in these tunnels. So we're like, all right, we're going to check this place out. So I know that there's an access point that you can get into through the basement of the main hospital. So you won't actually have to try to find one of the ground hatches, which I did find one of the ground hatches, but the ladder going down there is pretty janky. So I was trying to find another way around and have to take a janky ass ladder. So going into this place, we go into the main hospital, and you go down this staircase that's over by one of the main entrance doors, and that'll lead down into where there's one of the access points into the basement, because there's a bunch of doors and everything that are welded shut. So you kind of had to know like where you can get through, where people have busted stuff out. Like, that's like half the part of what you had to map. Was you could look up a hospital map, but you had to figure out where you could access and get through, because that was the hard part. But so I knew that there was an access point down into the basement from this side. So we ended up going in through this side, go down into the basement. And as I'm going down the stairs, there's this doorway looking thing to the right of me. I wouldn't say it's like necessarily a doorway, but it was like a brick wall that somebody had removed all the bricks from and made a doorway. but it wasn't like teenagers or somebody else like did it. It looked like at one point when the hospital was operating, they moved this part of the wall to create like an additional room or some kind of storage or something down there. So it was like professionally removed brick. So I was like, all right, this might be a cool spot to go into the tunnels from. So I start going down. I turn into that room. There's me, my girlfriend, and I. And as I walk into this room, I hear this disembodied voice to the right of me, right in my ear, and it says, "Run." And as I hear this thing say "run," I'm looking directly in front of me, and there's this like metal hospital cart, like the like the Gerties that they push around in the hallways. And this thing goes to stand up, and it's this like tall, lanky, decrepit, bluish gray skin toned, like deformed, like not normal, like it wasn't a person. Like this thing was like tall and lanky and was not shaped like a normal person. And I was looking at this thing from the back, and as it starts to stand up, I see this like long black greasy like hair on the top of its head, and the thing's not wearing any clothes. Like I said, it's got this like decayed skin color, and I just take off out of this place after seeing that. I have my girlfriend and her friend with me, and I didn't even tell them what I saw because I didn't want them to look back, freak out. I'm just trying to get them out of there because I don't know what the hell this thing is. And as we're trying to run out of the hospital, my girlfriend's snapping some pictures behind her, and I can actually send you some of them after the show, but she ends up snapping pictures of whatever the hell this thing was. But the weird part about it was that whatever I saw was very physical looking, but obviously whatever whispered in my ear was not. And whatever she captured in this picture, it's like transparent, like it looks like an apparition. So it's kind of this, it's not, it was like a creature sighting, but it's also something that's like on the spiritual plane, which this inevitably is kind of what led me down the path of like learning how to research, do my podcast and everything, because I didn't know where to place this thing in my head. I didn't even talk about this for a while when I started up my show, just because I didn't want to be the guy that pops onto the scene with a podcast and just starts talking about his weird experience. Like I kind of left it in the back burner for a while until I kind of saw if anybody else had an experience like that or whatever, just because I didn't want to, again, just throw it on the table because I kind of felt crazy for having the experience in the first place, and especially not knowing where to place it, because it's like a Sasquatch, like you have like a context for that.
Yeah.
A ghost, you have a context for that. An alien, you have a context for that. But whatever this thing was, like I had no context for what the hell this thing could possibly even be. So I start doing some research into it, and I come across like pale crawlers and like rakes. And when I start diving into those, they seem like they're mainly stuff on the internet. There are some sightings, but I'll kind of get into what I honestly kind of think those were. But when I started really, really diving into it, I started getting back into basically what the Native Americans would describe Wendigos to look like. And it wasn't this like deer headed, like animal body, like being type creature. It was this like zombie like decaying, like zombie type creature. Like it had decaying flesh. It was like lanky. It would chew its lips off because it would get so hungry that it would have its lips removed. And I started getting more into like what the Native Americans described as a Wendigo, and that's kind of started to fit my context of what I honestly started believing that I had seen. And I'm always open for discussion on this one because I still to this day don't know exactly what I've seen, but this is at least like the route of research that I went down to somewhat explain it to myself. But as I started diving into like the actual Native American depictions of the Wendigo and what people currently think the Wendigo looks like, I started kind of getting this like separation that it seems like the transition of when everything started kind of going over to what everybody else talks about as Wendigos was when like all the settlers and everybody started coming through and they started hearing all of like the natives folklore stories and everything. And just like a lot of the stuff when they came through, like they would take a sacred site and they would call it like the devil's tea kettle, the devil's this, the devil's that. And they kind of throw this like satanic, like paganistic view on all of the Native American like folklore and everything like that. So what I kind of believe started to happen was that they started kind of playing telephone with the stories of the Wendigo, and they started adding like their paganistic, their demonistic views on it, and they started retelling the story for what it is now. And weirdly enough, like the sightings and counter stories started dropping off around this time of people claiming to see Wendigos and everything. But after that, you started getting to this point semi-currently where people started getting this rise of seeing like rakes or pale crawlers or whatever. So I started kind of thinking that we've basically separated what we believe is a Wendigo to a point of it being complete folklore. And we're like, there's no deer headed thing running around the woods out here. But on the other side, we've renamed something that was already named. and we're now calling them pale crawlers and rakes, and
Right.
the whole Wendigo concept, like it goes just beyond like that one specific tribe calling it that. Like it's this type of being that every tribe has a different name for. It's kind of like the skinwalker. Like skinwalker is specific to the Navajo, but that being said, there are other tribes that have other creatures
similar
/ medicine men
right,
that they just have different names for. So anybody that says like you can't see a skinwalker in Maine, for example, yes, you're not seeing a skinwalker because that's what the natives or the Navajo call it, but there's a different name for another being that's just like exactly what they're talking about. But that's basically what I ended up thinking started happening with like a lot of these pale crawler and rake sightings, is that people started like recasting or renaming what these Wendigo sightings originally were. And as I started coming down this rabbit hole, it was like I started coming into these realizations about like the splitting of like folklore on like what people think could be possible versus what people cannot think is possible. But started realizing that there's always this like root of all these different things, that there always is going to be telephone through oral tradition, but
of course
you have to try to break apart where that telephone started completely manipulating into something else. Otherwise, you might be sent off a totally wrong path. And like I said, I'm always open for debate on what I had actually seen, but that's at least the point that I had led up to is with my research. And, if it wasn't for the fact of me taking the time to be able to split that up, like, I could have been completely off in a totally different direction, thinking that I saw, for example, like a rake or something like that, when, I don't think it was that at all either. So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, it's inevitably what led me down my path to my research, was just trying to figure out what could possibly exist in this world and hearing other people's experiences about what could exist in this world.
Yeah.
And then hopefully being able to connect people's pieces of things, because, I've connected my experiences with other people's experiences, and I've connected previous guests' experiences with another previous guest experience. But, all of us are going to feel crazy until we have somebody else that feels like they've had something similar. And if we don't get out here and actually start talking about our experiences, which, I'm guilty of because I held mine back for a while, you never know where the research might go, or on the other side, like who else you might actually start to feel sane about something like this,
Yeah. So you think you saw a Wendigo?
I believe I saw a Wendigo, or whatever the tribes that were in Michigan may have been calling a creature like that. But at least from that depiction, or again, maybe a pale crawler, but I still am pretty convinced that might just be a renaming of a Wendigo. So
yeah, no, I would agree with you. So, if you do, I mean, you've obviously done research, right? But in the research I've done, and just a quick side story on, I have pictures, and I don't think they're on the internet. I've never posted them, and I got them from a friend of mine who is a cryptozoology guy, right? And that's like what he does. He's a cryptozoologist. Like, he is a full-time researcher pretty much. And we do a lot of our research stuff, whether it's just for high strangeness in general. It's not just Bigfoot, but we are open to it all in the Allegheny National Forest. And there is, what do they call that? Camping, dispersed camping in the national forest. So we have this campsite. It is a campsite, but it's not like, you've got to drive. We drive like 10, 12 miles in on fire roads to get there. Right.
Those are the good camp spots.
Yeah. It's deep, 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 deep. And there's like 3 or 4 campsites right there. Well, the prior weekend, so we had gotten there, but my buddy had been there already for him and someone else had been there already for like 4 days. And the campsite next to him, which is this really cool campsite with like a stream running through it. And, it's very picturesque. Let me put it that way. He had set up trail cams to, like, at this point I use trail cams for deterrent.
Yeah, because they can see the beams at this point,
right?
Like,
or whatever,
kind of
whatever.
that out,
I don't care what anyone believes or whatever. But when I have a trail cam up, nothing messes with my tent. It doesn't, right? So I'll cover the whole campsite with trail cams, and we haven't had any issues at night while we've been sleeping since we'd started doing that. Well, the guy next to the campsite, and in the next campsite over, my buddy was going out to like get breakfast or something. Cause there's a really good diner it's like an hour drive, but it's only because the roads are, gravel, whatever. He stops and says hello to them in the morning. Well, they're kind of all freaked out. It was two guys, and he shows them a picture that came off the trail cam, and it's a freaking rake standing right next to their tent. I'll send it to you. And unfortunately, the picture I have is a little pixelated because it's like a picture of a picture. But he has the original, and it's pretty damn. It's like, the quintessential trail cam picture, but it's of a 6 or 7 foot tall figure that's just white, gray, and the really long arms, and man, it's spooky.
Is there tunnels and stuff over there? Because
yeah.
That's the other split of my research, is that I forgot to mention this during my whole explanation of like skinwalkers and rakes and everything, but I've dived so much into the whole aspect of like these underground dwelling like beings. And I do think that there is part of that phenomenon, especially if they're like these quick ones that people have seen them coming from caves. I don't think that those ones are the Wendigos. I think that those might be a mixture. I mean, it might be a mixed phenomenon where people are seeing a little bit of both, because there is part of the folklore where like Wendigos will go underground, but that's usually during the summer, and during the winter they're completely out and everything. But the whole idea about these underground dwelling beings, I definitely think would fit still the context of
I'm sure there are caves in that area, but it's not like part of, like the whole East Coast has got like this giant cave system that goes from like Vermont all the way down the Appalachian Spine, all the way through Kentucky, southern Indiana, Illinois, and then there's a whole nother.
Just Appalachia in general. Who knows what's in those damn mountains?
Just spooky, right? But the Allegheny's not really part of that, so it's not. There is not like a ton of like cave systems per se. Not like it is in like the Appalachia. It's just not like that. It's not that like Mammoth cave system. It's not like that. There might be individual caves, but there's not like anything that's like, oh, this is where we're going to go spelunking. There's none of that per se. Right.
I mean, there might be some weird spots though, especially if these things are tall and lanky. Who knows where these things could fit through? You have all kinds of crazy
stuff that happened there because they have a man-made reservoir there where they flooded the whole valley. Right. And, there's some spiritual stuff there. It's a whole lot of high strangeness there, man. But that rake, but I've always looked at the Wendigo. I get annoyed when they correlate it with Bigfoot because it's not the same thing. It's like totally different. Like, so who does it? And then where the hell did the deer and antler thing come from? Because Wendigo that I learned about when I was younger, when I was doing Native American study, like the traditional Algonquin Wendigo, the emaciated figure with the like ashen, sunken, glowing eyes, like fang teeth where you said like they chewed their own lips off. That's the legend, right?
I'm glad that you've dived into this, because I'll have people sit here sometimes and argue with me about like what a Wendigo looks like. But yeah, my honest belief, just from at least the research that I've done, is that I think that split started happening with like retelling of the stories from like all the settlers and everything. I think they just started adding their own spin on it, because that's the only explanation I can honestly.
What I'm wondering is, where does the antlered skull type thing come in? Like where does that?
I think they were trying to just mix like paganistic views with what was in the area.
Well, I wonder if there's
over
like
in
some
like
sort
Europe,
of god, and I'll say little g god. I'm wondering, like, is there something in Europe maybe that is depicted that way? I wonder.
I think it might just be a native thing that they just depict a lot of things with antlers, because even like the Uktena, some people call it like the horned serpent, but at least the way that I grew up with my grandma telling me about it was they would describe it as having antlers, not as having horns per se. So I think it's also just partially a mix with the natives would describe all of these different creatures with having antlers instead of using the words horns. So I think it was partially that mix where they were just kind of using like the verbiage with it, and they were keeping the native twist, but with like their pagan views of things.
Yeah. I mean, and when you talk about the Wendigo, I mean, it's not really an exclusively Algonquin thing. I mean, it had to have spanned farther. But when you say Algonquin, I mean, you're talking about most of, the East Coast, right? At least along the border section there, all the way over to like, past Lake Superior and farther even, right? So who knows? I mean,
shit, I did a 3-part series on Wendigos at one point for Bizarre Encounters. And it was Wendigos, but I started looking into all the other different tribe names for them, and I found at least like 10 that I covered in that episode. Like, and they're very close. Like Wachuge, for example. Like, it you can read between the lines and know they're talking about the same creature. It's just slight little differences within like the storytelling. Like, the Wendigo, of course, you get that from cannibalizing somebody. But on the other side, turning into Wachuge, you get that from having too much pride or thinking that you're better than everybody else. So it's kind of like little slight differences, but everything else is the same besides that one little tweak to it.
Right. So when I think of like Wendigo in like mainstream media, I always think of Ravenous. You ever see
I think that movie Antlers that came out like a couple years ago that was on like Hulu and stuff.
Maybe.
I haven't seen Ravenous. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Oh my gosh, you gotta. It's from I think it's 99 maybe.
Oh, so, that's the good era. 80s and 90s is when you had all
I think
practical
99.
effects.
It's basically and there were some good actors in it. Guy Pearce. Oh gosh, what's the other guy's name? The British or Irish guy. Robert Carlyle. There's a whole bunch of actors in it that are really good, and it's set in the 1840s in California, and it's basically them. They're stranded at this like military outpost in the Sierras, right? And turns out that some of the guys have been eating other people, and so they talk about the Wendigo and that because people are turning in, but it's not what you think per se. It's not like they turn into a Wendigo, but they kind of do, but they don't change form per se. But the music and it's real janky. It's a really good movie, man. It's a dark, it's not a comedy, but it's like a dark comedy. When you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah.
I'd still recommend Antlers. It doesn't really fit the whole like native lore like we were talking about. It definitely has like the half deer looking creature, but I mean, other than that, the actual story of the folklore for Antlers is pretty close. It's just the depiction itself is different.
Gotcha.
But altogether, the story's pretty good. It's pretty gory, and it's straight up like a Wendigo story. So I mean, there's only so many Wendigo movies out there, but yeah, Antlers, that's definitely one of the more recent pretty good ones.
Okay, yeah.
I'm surprised that there's not a lot more like high budget cryptid movies. Like, it seems like such an untapped market that you're overkilling it with these slashers. They're redoing all these different sci-fi franchises. They're redoing all this.
Right.
And there's a shit ton of Bigfoot horror movies, but they're all like very, very like there's good indie and then there's like very indie, like there's a good handful of good Sasquatch ones out there, but the rest of them are just like so spoofy. You don't know if they're trying to be serious or not, like
right.
But untapped market though. There's thousands of creatures you can make movies for.
Thousands. Literally tons and tons. And not only that, but like, just stories of not, yeah. I mean, I guess they do make like some haunted, like, like they took some things like The Conjuring and some of those things like that and turned it into, The
Warrens are very debated though.
Of course, they're very debated. They're very debated. But, at the end of the day, it's entertaining. So
hey, the one downfall I think would be like they'd start doing that. They'd make all these movies, and the next thing you know, they're gonna have like a Marvel Cinematic Universe of like cryptids, and all of us that are like into cryptids are gonna be like, all right, it's lost its fun. Everybody's into it now.
Now this sucks. This just sucks so bad now. Oh man, yeah, for sure.
That's a cool Bigfoot tattoo. Did you see the last movie, man? Like,
Oh my
God damn it.
Damn it, they ruined everything. Ah, shit. That's really funny. But yeah, so you like horror movies. I'm gauging.
Oh yeah, 100%. Horror and
100%.
comedies, you gotta have like opposite sides of the spectrum.
Right. You know, I used to be into the horror way more, but I'm kind of old now. So it's like I like to sleep, you know?
See, I just moved away from like the gory shit. Like when I was a teenager, I really liked the gory shit. And not that I'm like old or anything. I'm only 31, but like when I watch horror, I like the stuff that's like suspenseful, like thriller, like gets you into it, like the paranormal experience. Not the stuff that's like, you know, got all the jump scares, not the stuff that's overly gory, but the stuff that gets you like heavy into the storyline, like even past like paranormal, like platform, or just like scenarios that are like scary scenarios that you put yourself in. Like that's the type of stuff I'm into.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree at that point. And I don't know. I almost don't even look at that stuff as like horror. It's more like, you know, you're right, like thriller to an extent.
Like I've been out of the slasher concept since like I'm good with like the 90s, and then all the modern day slashers like I'm pretty good on. Even if they're remaking ones I like I don't care to see the remakes. Like
yeah, I do like some of the paranormal stuff now though, like things
the paranormal stuff is really good lately, especially the demon stuff. They got a lot of really good stuff with that.
Some of that stuff is pretty good. And I'll watch some of that. But, you know, it does. That's the type of shit that'll keep you up at night, man.
Stuff like Terrifier, though, like I'm all good on that. I saw the first one. It's not that like I can't handle it. It's just that it's like I don't want to watch it. Like it's not entertaining to me to watch. Like I don't like gory stuff like that. Like even Saw, dude. Like I used to love Saw when I was a kid, and it's like I'll watch those now, but I don't want to see the gore part. Like I just like the journey of like all the different traps and like the game plan of everything. Like I could totally do without the gore of it. Like I don't care. I just like the getting you into that weird mindset, you know?
For sure. I keep thinking like that one, is it The Right? Is that what it's called with Anthony Hopkins?
Yes. It's R-I-T-E, right?
R-I-T-E, yeah.
Yep.
Like that was that's the type of movie I'm talking about. Like it's low key, but it's also like, oh shit, like this dude's like, is he getting possessed? Is he possessed? You know, that whole type of thing. I like that stuff. So I
like the ones too with paranormal stuff that they do the like based on a true story. And of course they always like they do what they want with it. But it seems like with the paranormal stuff, like, okay, so you have like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you take Ed Gein, which wasn't in Texas. He didn't chainsaw up all these people. And then they go based on a true story. And then you see what it's based on. You're like, all right, this doesn't even like translate.
Right. This is nothing
at least
like
with the paranormal stuff. Yes, it is way over exaggerated, but like the concept is still there, you know, like this kid's getting thrown around at night. You know, you can leave that sentence and do what you want with it. But in a movie, they're going to have this kid getting thrown off the walls, like all that kind of crazy shit.
Right.
But it's like, they'll take their liberties with it, but it's not as like off with it. You know what I mean? They can do more with it.
Yeah.
To still keep it somewhat closer to the story.
Yeah.
Besides just Hollywood part of it.
Right. Like The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Or even The Exorcism to begin with, man. If you want to take it back to a classic, like to this day, even if it doesn't look the best, like the story itself, like still holds true and it, you know, creeps you out pretty good.
Oh
like,
yeah, absolutely. And everyone, nobody can unsee that face.
Yeah, especially like the throwing up and everything.
Yeah.
And you start looking into the background of that movie and it makes it almost scarier. Like when she's whipping around on the bed, she actually like broke her spine and everything. Like, like there's so much behind the story of that movie that it's not even like the movie that I think people are scared of anymore. It's like the curse behind the movie that every actor from that movie has got like messed up in the head from filming that movie.
Right. And I think Emily, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it's the Emily Rose story or a different story, but there was this girl who was allegedly possessed by a demon. It's going through an exorcism, and they actually have audio of her speaking in other languages that she had no business knowing, and in different tones. And one of the people that she allegedly was channeling or whatever the hell you would call it was Nero and stuff like that. And they actually have this on audio, and I don't remember. You ever heard
I
of
don't know if
that?
we're thinking of the same movie or not.
Oh, no.
But I remember
I'm not talking about that movie. I'm talking about, but what brought me there was the Emily Rose movie. Is I can't remember if that's what that is based on. Is that real character or if it was something else?
Yeah, I think that it is. I thought you were talking about, there's this other movie that is one of those ones that kind of fell into obscurity, and I don't even remember what the name of it is, but came out in maybe like 2013, and it was about this like group of like British college researchers that were investigating this one girl who was like demon possessed, and it's all like based on a true story. But the cool part about that film, which is where I was kind of connecting this to, was there was parts where, you know, she's getting possessed and everything, and they actually played the real audio recordings for, like, of course, like act out the scene, but they play the real audio recordings like over it from like the real exorcism and experience and everything. And I thought that was pretty cool that they did that.
Is
it was just
cool.
One of those little things that if you know, you know, if not, it just sounds like sound effects, you know?
Yeah, it was just cool how, well, not cool, but when I heard those tapes, that was just bone chilling.
That's that unexplainable stuff. That's like, how does like a 16-year-old speak Latin fluently? And I think
she was like, she was like a 16-year-old German girl who was sounding like this old, I mean, like me, right? In essence, speaking and saying that she's Nero, or that you're talking to Nero, or talking to, you know, I can't remember who else the other ones were, but they were just like, you know, awful folks. So crazy.
I mean, you still see that stuff all the time happening down in like South America and Mexico. Like, I don't know what it is like about that area, because obviously the people have faith. Like, people in South America and like Mexico seem to be like overly spiritual, but you know, there's so many tapes of just horrifying stuff that comes out like that, of like, again, people's voices changing completely and speaking different languages. And it's like, you know, there's only so much you can do with video editing, especially if you're in a small village in, you know, the middle of nowhere. Like, how do you explain that stuff? Especially if it's something that, like, for example, like a priest goes out there and deals with it, and then a priest released the tapes. Like, you know, that's not, I'm not always just saying that like a stature of authority is always like the explanation of something, but it's not like it's some guy intentionally trying to pull over a hoax if it's something that goes through the Vatican, because, you know, with these exorcisms and everything, like, they have to get approved. Like, there's multiple layers that go through it. Like, if there's any doubt of anything in it, like, somebody's going to bring it up at some point. And that's why the Vatican won't even mess with an exorcism until they know that it actually is something, is because they don't want to just be out here like, all right, demon gone, demon gone,
and
demon
or
gone.
Even
like
liability nowadays, you know, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, the Vatican only messes with it if they honestly have something. You have to go through, like, you know, mental evaluations. You have to go through this. Like, there's so much to go through. I don't think people realize that it's not just like, I need an exorcism and a priest shows up tomorrow. Like, if you're getting an actual exorcism, it has to be Vatican approved and go through all of the different chains, you know? Like,
now, other denominations do other things, but the, you know, Catholicism itself, it's a process.
Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
For sure. So, we're coming up on an hour. So, what I'd like to do is ask you another question about, so obviously the name of this podcast is Broadcasting Seeds, and I like to get folks' take on plant a seed in my audience's mind, you know, and get them thinking of something that maybe you've come across that is different, or that you haven't really heard about, or something that you just feel like more people should look into, or more people should research on their own. Yeah.
So this one's gonna be a hard one, because I don't want to get into like the full crazy explanation of this, but one thing that I've come across in my research is, when it comes to UFOs, for example, like, everybody wants to have this debate on, you know, what you're seeing. Like, is it something extraterrestrial? Is it something human? Is it this? Is it that? But at the end of the day, with my research, I've came to the conclusion that I honestly think that it's a huge mix of both. And you have to take into consideration that, you know, if there is the whole idea about downcrafts, all of that stuff, people are going to be attempting to recreate these things. And on top of this, we're going to be getting the old beat up one. So that's what you're going to be seeing. And then these things, these extraterrestrials, whatever they are they're going to be flying like the new models. So the phenomenon is going to constantly be changing. If people are always wondering why the shapes are changing, everything is changing. But at the end of the day, it's definitely a two-sided phenomenon that, just because, you want to sit here and pretend like you trust the government doesn't mean that the government won't do some shiesty shit to you. Because my connection into a lot of this stuff with the research on why humans would be doing this stuff, besides just military connection to things, goes back into, honestly, starting back at like World War II, that when they were doing all of these different experiments on people, trying to do eugenics, do all this type of stuff, it got to a point, obviously, with World War II, the war ended and everything, and you can't do that type of stuff to people anymore. So what do you do when you can't do these type of experiments to people anymore that you believe are something that transcends human rights, that you think that you're doing something that's beyond that, whether it's for eugenic reasons or if it's for, you think you're going to create something that's going to create the best infinite human whatsoever, like you're going to have a means of doing that. So you have to consider that with a lot of this abduction phenomenon that's going on, that even within that, there's extraterrestrial and there's got to be human side of the phenomenon. And there's just got to be a continued explanation for all of this eugenic stuff that's going on. And that's always the connection that I get into, is that, again, it's a double-sided phenomenon. And maybe I could come back on another time and make this a lot less quick, because I felt like I lost 99% of like the solid information with that one, just trying to explain it within like a minute or so. But I got like notes on notes connecting into one, going into like the MK Ultra mind control stuff, leading into this, leading into some of when all the UFO abduction cases started, some examples of people seeing like masks and everything while they were having UFO abduction experiences. But I can get this a lot heavier on a future episode.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, the UFO phenomenon, you got to consider the fact that it's not just one thing. It's got to be it's got to be multiple things. And more than likely, it's extraterrestrial just as much as it is human.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good thing everybody, especially with as much of it's in the news right now. Like it's just, people got to get their head straight around this stuff, what they, do the research. So
exactly. You come up to with your own conclusions. Don't let anybody tell you what everything is at the end of the day. Because, when it comes to ufology, when it comes to cryptids, the paranormal, anything like that, if anybody says they're an expert, you got to run back the other way, because we're all sitting here and we're all just flinging shit at a wall until hopefully something sticks. So, we're only going to get somewhere if all of us are trying to compile into the research and nobody's claiming to be an expert.
Yeah, as I consistently always say, we don't know shit. We don't. Mm-hmm. We don't know a damn thing. And as soon as you think you know, that's when you just need to quit the game. Because
all these UFO hearings sound like, we know all the information, right? But like, what do you guys know? Like, for me, it just sounds like a grasp at information. Like they're trying to see what other people are going to give them, but they know absolutely fucking nothing.
Yeah.
So they're going to be sitting here saying like, oh yeah, we have all this information, but we can't give it to you guys. But if you guys see any sightings, you see anything weird, like let us know. But other than that, like we're keeping all this information to ourselves. Maybe disclosure will happen one day, but till then, till we think that you guys are prepared enough, we're just going to keep everything to ourselves.
We will keep your FOIA reports as toilet paper.
We'll just drop something here and there. We'll drop you a breadcrumb just so that you know that we're not going to deny it completely, but it's out there. Like we'll get around to it eventually.
For sure. For sure. All right. So tell everyone where they can find you again.
You guys can either find me on my solo show, which is interview style, and that show is Inquiries of Our Reality podcast. And you've actually been a guest on that show, so if any of your listeners want to go and check out that episode, it was a really, really fun episode. And then on the other side, if you guys are into the more deep dive research style of things, you guys can go and check out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shane and Oren. And all my podcasts are available on any podcatcher you happen to use. They're also available on YouTube. And if you guys look up Inquiries of Our Reality or Bizarre Encounters on Google, we should be the main ones that pop up. And if any of you guys want to just find the link tree and be able to find a link to all the different stuff that I do, be it the Patreon, the merch store, each individual podcast, or even contacting me for any reason whatsoever, you guys get a hold of me through my link tree. And that one is LANKTR.open_minds_media.
Awesome. Well, I'll put the link in the show.
Make it easy for them.
Exactly. Again, man, I'm so glad we got to do this, and we will do it again soon before you know it. So
this was a good introduction to kind of lay down the groundwork a bit. And the next time I come in, I'll make sure that I bring some of my notes and everything on stuff,
man.
because
That's
I felt
awesome.
like I danced around a lot of concepts, but I didn't give the solid validity to them. So on the next one, I'll make sure that I bring.
If people don't know, it's by design. So it's just going to keep you coming back.
Exactly. Again, you got to do the breadcrumbs, like we were mentioning.
The whole point. Yeah. We're just like the government, just different.
But better. Trust us.
Trust us. Trust me. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. I promise.
I promise.
All right, man. Go eat some food.
I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe on my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me away cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they fill in the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown.